So I don't know about you, but my energy levels are lowering as the afternoon passes on here. So I'm Tom Hammond. I live up in Akron, Ohio, and I am not friends with LeBron James, but that's perfectly fine. I've been a Pixel addict for about 9 years now, so I know this is part of a Pixel support group, that we're all part of that, we support each other in that kind of addiction, very money draining addiction. And I've been doing Pixels. My very first Pixel thing was GE color effects. Has anyone heard of those? Raise your hand if you've heard of those. Yeah, Clyde, I know you've got, yeah. I'm still using mine. But is that me? No. Hold on, I'm done. It's over. I was using this for a, hold on. Oh, be quiet. There it is. Hush, hush. Okay. Got it. Marvelous devices. Okay, so my first experience with GE color effects, you buy them at Lowe's, and they come in 50 strings, 50 pixels per string, and you get this handy-dandy little radio controller, right? So that you can pick from 20 different effects, and you have to get the remote in a range near the string of pixels, then you can push a button and they change, which for me that was pretty cool. But if you buy 5 strings of those, you get 5 remotes. So I had to stand on different parts of my property to make sure that when I pushed the button, it didn't change the wrong string effect. So after the first year, that got pretty old. And so I got on the internet, and I found this web page where this guy hacks GE color effects Christmas lights, and you can hook them up to an Arduino, which is like a little microcontroller, like a baby Raspberry Pi. And you can actually, this guy made an animation language. You can actually type in Notepad the animations, and it makes all those strings work together. So that was my first introduction into the world of sequenced lights and all that kind of stuff. So that was year number 2. And I think I got into X-Lights about year number 3 or 4. So I do all the standard stuff, Raspberry Pi, Falcon, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's what I do. And I think my second year I did start with a pixel tree. And how many do have pixel trees already? Just give me a raise of hands. Almost everybody. So I'm singing to the choir here, I think. But this is still a pretty good thing, because the neatest thing about pixel trees, it's very much a DIY hobby. Everyone has a different take on how they want to invent a pixel tree. I mean, you can buy pre-made solutions, from who does make those? Matos has a pre-done solution. Who else? Anybody else? Okay, so you can actually buy the whole. What's that? But you can also make your own solutions too, just with hardware stores. So part of this presentation is going to be about my experience with a pixel tree, but I'd also like to hear your ideas and how you all figured out some cool solutions to making some great solutions to these things. So my first pixel tree, my first major one was actually last year. So I actually built a pretty big one. In my case, I think it's 21 feet, which is average kind of big. So I started with a 400 pixel tree on year number 2, I think, and I thought that was pretty spiffy. It was about, I don't know, 8 feet tall above the ground. And I think the first year I had that running, some lady knocked on my door, and she says, "Where do I buy that tree? And where can I get one of those?" And she's expecting you just stroll into Home Depot and you just pick it up in a box till you got it. And I told her, well, this is about $400, and I had to get a controller and some generic strings, and her eyes instantly defocused. You just knew she was not into this. So this is very much a DIY type of project for people that love doing this kind of stuff anyway. So slide number 2, QR code. After this is all done, probably by midweek, if you want to snap a picture with this phone, it will not take you to some strange websites. But for part of the India Mini here, all these sessions are recorded, so you'll be able to watch them again if you want to hear them again. All the PowerPoint slides will be available also on Facebook. Larry?
Yes.
on the Facebook page. So this will also take you to my site, which all the minis that I teach at, I record all the videos. So you'll see Light Up Ohio, which is the Columbus event. I think the past 5 years of teachings are there with all the PowerPoints that go with it. So if you just want to take a minute and snap that, you'll have that for future reference. Just take you straight to the videos page. So, everyone good? Okay. So we're going to talk about pixel trees. So some simple stuff. Why do a pixel tree? There's different kinds of pixel trees available, different shapes, different ways you can put pixels on them, different shapes of pixels, different sizes of pixels. How do you plan for them? How do you plan for the spacing, the power requirements, all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be kind of just a quick overview of a lot of the different ways of doing pixel trees. Since a lot of you have trees already, you might get some ideas out of this that might prompt you for pixel tree number 2, or just try some new things. So let's try this out here, okay? Why would we do a pixel tree? Well, they're easily the centerpiece of the show. Okay, so they easily draw everyone's attention from your entire show to the pixel tree. That's pretty awesome because what they do is pretty awesome, but it can also be a problem because if you make the pixel tree so incredibly awesome every second of your show, no one's going to look at the rest of your show. So even this applies to any kind of pixel show. I learned this at Christmas Expo a few years ago, that you might have a ton of cool props and 20,000 lights or 100,000 lights. It's really easy to turn on all the lights all the time for all your sequences for every second of the music. And that's kind of detracting for the beauty of what your show can do. So there are times when you shouldn't light up your pixel tree, or you should make it very minimal so something else can take the center of the stage for a while. So even though these are the center of attention, try to minimize how you use it so that when they do come on, the impact is great. So it's easy to put effects on a pixel tree because they're just like a matrix, except all the pixels are vertical, right? So you can put text on a pixel tree, you can put pictures, you can put video clips on it. All the effects on X lights that can look pretty cool on the matrix will work directly with the pixel tree. So they're very flexible on what you can put on them. So that's another thing. They're easy to program for effects. They also tend to lead the show for the other props to follow. So basically, if you have a big pixel tree and some small ones around it, they can sort of all point. You can have your show lead to the tree. You can do things like that. So. They look pretty natural in your yard. So they can be easy to build. I think the one that I built I thought would be pretty easy, but it took me all year to put together. It was quite a build for me, and I'll explain why. Because I didn't buy a kit. I actually built mine from all the parts up. I went to Home Depot, went to all these different places to get things. So it depends on how much work you want to put into it. So these are the different shapes of a tree. So you have a 360-degree tree where the strings of pixels are vertical, okay, and then they can go all the way around the tree. And that's good for like a corner lot, where cars are coming from both sides of the road. But you have to be careful with that because the lights in the back of your tree, of the 360, can bleed through to the front of the tree. So if you're trying to do animations where you want people to see something on the front of your tree, either in X lights, you program it so that only the half of those strings are doing something and the other half are dark, right? But a lot of the times you're going to have effects that want to run around the entire tree, and the effects impact will go down because you'll see the lights from back. So my favorite kind of tree is the 180 tree, where it just goes a half circle, on your tree, and you can easily see that from the back too. That's it, because the lights they're just pixels. You have the pixel strips, but they still look pretty good. You can also have what's called a flat tree, and basically what that is those pixel ribbons that come on a spool that they were saying here that they don't hold up very well. That was my first tree. Okay. So I tried to put ribbons of those down some PVC pipes, and I stored. They didn't even last before Christmas started. They failed in my garage, as I was storing them. So I wasn't real happy with that. Those can't. But I have a friend that swears by them. So the nice thing about those ribbon trees is they roll up. So if you have a flat part of your house and you just want to roll it down the window to the rest of your house, that's pretty handy, pretty convenient, But you just have to make sure that if you get ribbon pixels, that you get them from a really trustworthy source that aren't going to break, because they have a high rate of failure. And the reason, besides the silicone and the water getting inside those sleeves, another reason is those ribbon pixels are trimmable. You can cut them to any length you want. And those connections where the cutting joints are on the circuit board, that's where the contacts are trying to make, those can break when they flex. So the more wear and tear you get on the ribbons, those connections fail. So you just got to check your sources. Spiral trees, those are Walmart things. You can actually rip the pixels out of there, or the lights, and put your own pixels in and make them animate that way. So, and also, you know, what I did for my yard is I bought some cheap Dollar General cheap trees, you know, like just traditional stuff you're not supposed to put outside. I put them outside anyway. And those come with plastic stands, and they generally don't hold up to the wind very well. So what I did is I got a black pipe, like a half-inch black pipe, and I welded a cross beam to it, right? So the black pipe's about 2 feet down and about a foot this way. So the tree, I took a standoff and I sat it right inside the black pipe. I actually pounded the black pipe in the ground, and the tree goes right in that, and then it's like goes up within a minute or two, and then it's perfectly wind-worthy. So you can, that's kind of cool because your yard gets a natural look to it. So pixel trees don't look too handsome in the daylight, but if you get natural trees and you just string them with lights on them, looks pretty nice in the daytime too. So if you have any questions about anything, just you know stop me, or pull my plug on my power to something to get my attention. And this is an example of a tree, but this is better to look at. Okay, so we'll talk about the technologies involved in this kind of tree. This is the most common kind, so we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so different kinds of lights, all right? So the most common kind are the volapixels that we all know and love, those 2811 Marvels. And basically the way these work, and most of you do this already, is you have these what are called pixel strips. You can get these at Boscoyo or Wally's Lights or all these places. It's like a PVC, or I think it's ABS plastic, and you stick your lights in them and you string them up. So that's the most common kind. Does anybody make their trees a different way besides these strips? Nobody? So this is the way. Okay, it's like the Mandalorian.
Seed lights.
What's that?
Seed lights have to take over next year.
What kind?
Seed lights.
Well.
Less
Yep. Yeah, seed lights are really cool because they're tiny, but I keep hearing from people that they're not reliable. So, because they're so tiny, and the chips are just like a little epoxy blob instead of like a real chip. So I'm kind of wary about them. So I haven't gotten any myself, but I've heard from 2 people that they wear out pretty quickly. But that's just what I've heard. I don't know what the actual thing is. But seed lights would be perfect for like an indoor tree. So like what I did for my house is in my bedroom, because I didn't have room in my living room because I had other props in there, is I put a white tree in my bedroom right next to the window, and it's part of my show. So that's kind of fun when I try to go to sleep and I have this disco ball going on in my bedroom. But on a white tree, it looks really cool because it lights up the needles really nice. So I like it quite a bit actually. It just uses regular bullets, but that would look really good with seeds. Also, you have the C9 tech bulbs. If you want that traditional look on your tree, those are really good for that. You can get those pretty much anywhere too. Did you blink? Good. Okay, and we talked see that thing about 100% brightness is not recommended. That was alluded to in the previous talk. Most everyone knows this, but you don't have to run your pixels at 100% brightness. You'll lose color quality if they're too bright. That your reds and your blues and your greens won't be as rich if they're too bright. And you also have to worry about higher power requirements, right? And you have to inject more power if you're doing power injection. So if most props, I think, work well at 30% brightness in your yard. I mean, if you have even if you have some ambient lighting from street lights and things, 30% works very, very well. The only thing you run into problems with is suppose you have, you calculate that if you had 100% brightness, you need about 10 power injection points in any prop you're making, yet you just worked out the math and that's how many you need. So you think, well, if I did 30% brightness, I might not only need 3 power injection points, right? Because you don't have your power requirements are less. What you have to be careful of is if you're planning your power needs, like your power supply is, that you're only going to need 30% capacity for that tree, then you think, well, I can put a whole lot more stuff on that power supply now because I'm only using 30% of that capacity. Well, you're expecting your software to tell the tree, I want you to be 30%, right? Your X lights, you can tell your tree to be 30% brightness, or you tell your controller to be 30% brightness. You set it in the software. Well, if your software glitches or your controller resets, and your tree suddenly runs at 100% brightness, but your power supply was overloaded with other pixels, you'll blow fuses. So some people, like when they're doing their wiring for their power supply needs, they wire everything as if they're going to do 100%. That way they keep all their power needs safe on the power supply, just in case something happens to run by 100% by accident. Does that make sense? So you can run your stuff at 30%, but if you want to avoid blowing fuses and overloading stuff, don't wire stuff at 30%, you know, like your power injections, all that. I do it, but I'm taking a risk, so because I hate power injection. I mean, some people won't do it, period, because it's a lot of work. So if I can do anything to reduce that, like lowering my brightness and planning my power supplies for that brightness, I'll do it. But I could have a blow up someday, so that's the risk I chose to take. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, not much about this, but these are just various controllers, and we had some talk about that for some of these other sessions here. When you buy them, especially if you need with help with these kind of things. If you're on Facebook, that's fantastic because there's a lot of support sites that can help you use these controllers. Regrettably, I think about 90% of these controllers don't run on Mac. So only Windows. So I hate to tell you that you can't use. You think I'm BSing? Yeah, you are. That was for you. I had to work it in. So I'm not going to talk about this. But the other thing I will talk about is, see that bottom line there where it talks about wired versus wireless? Okay, wireless is really cool because you don't have to worry about running Ethernet cables everywhere, right? You can run your pixels off of Wi-Fi. The danger with doing Wi-Fi is it's not bad if you need to throw up a prop somewhere really quick mid-season, like something goes down, you got to throw something in the yard real quick. But if you have a fairly large show, your Wi-Fi could get overloaded. Like if you have family members watching Netflix and doing all this kind of stuff, you might have burps in your Wi-Fi coverage and stuff. So Wi-Fi isn't good for reliable shows. Okay, it'll work it might work fine, or you might get burps, well, it'll hesitate and get weird. So when you're doing something like a mega tree and you've got 3,000 pixels on it, that won't push a Wi-Fi connection too hard. But if you have a lot of other things running Wi-Fi, it's best to do high density stuff with Ethernet, to make sure you stick it on Ethernet to keep the performance going well. Okay, so size of trees. Okay, I did a small survey a little while ago, and most people, build 10-foot trees, okay, or so, and then they go lower from there. When you're talking about bigger trees, you're talking about more pixels, more cost, more power concerns. You got to do that injection stuff, right? The bigger you get, you also have to worry about how heavy is your tree when it gets really big. I'll show you my tree in a little bit. I built a tree that's built off of a design called ASAP. Walter Monkhouse made this design called the ASAP pole, a strap and a pole. Okay, and that's like a ratcheting pole. So it starts out at a certain height, and then you can ratchet to get to the next height. Does anyone have one of those kind of poles? Yeah, okay. So I think if I remember right, you do a 2-inch rigid EMT pipe with an 1.5 inch rigid EMT inside of it, so that's the part that extends. Do you know how heavy 2 of those pipes are? 2 10-foot sections? Okay, you put a winch on that, you put a tree topper on top of that, you put a star, okay, my star is a little heavier. I can't lift that pole up. I need 3 people to lift that pole up. And that's kind of deflating when I can't put up on my own show. I have to rely on something else to put it up. So the bigger your tree, you have to think about that. Do you have help getting it up, or do you have a mechanical means to get it erect? Are you going to rent a lift? Or are you going to do something else to get that thing up in the air? So
that's for the fire department. They come out weapon class 1 year. The sounds are fire. So the whole field, I think it's 16 whatever, all the way down. Nice compound. With the business for people going out. They can the cops.
Or you pretend like you have a fire. That'll get them out there too. so I think my 21-foot monstrosity was about $1,800, you know, and that was kind of pandemic prices, you know, where the cost of everything in Home Depot was super expensive and Lowe's, you know, everything still is. But if I would have built that tree, you know, a few years before I did, it might have been 2/3 the cost, maybe even half the cost. So all those materials do add up. So that's another consideration with your pixels and everything. Okay, these are places where you can get stuff for your tree. You know, Gilbert Engineering, we talked about Matos. You know, they have pre-built, you know, packages you can buy and have shipped to your house. You know about the standard hardware stores, but you can also go to local plumbing stores, steel yards if you're looking for pipe material, right? There's a sort of a, you know, the 12 volt, 6 volt Hatfield McCoy kind of camp here that everyone does. Well, now you have the square pole tree people and the round pole tree people, you know, which is stronger, you know, and people will fight over it. And but you can find this kind of material at those kind of places, local welding companies, you know, things like that, even Craigslist. Where did you get your tree at? You found your hoop and your pole?
Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace.
It was a utility company that was metal spools.
Yeah.
And they were selling them on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, just out of the blue, and then you got like a lamp post for the center part.
It was its prior lamp was a street lamp.
Yeah, I don't know how you did. You went to a miti, and somehow you found this on Marketplace, and you rented a vehicle to drive that thing home.
It was about $100 for the 7-foot spool, which actually, because there's 2 rings on it, I can make 2 trees out of that, and the 14-foot lamp post.
Yeah.
So $100, I got the base and the pole for a tree.
Yeah, so everything is like totally creative. I mean, whatever, you know, it comes into your head for an idea, that's what pixel trees are all about. And where to get pixels, that's going to be on another slide, so that's pretty much anywhere like this. Okay, lots of places that have, you know, pixels, you know, that you can get for this kind of thing. 12 volt, 5 volt, okay, remember we talked about that in the last meeting a little bit. It doesn't matter if you're not too worried about your circuits in your house being overloaded. Okay, so 12 volt, 5 volt is not a big deal if you've got plenty of circuits in your house to run your show. I think for the first 6 years of my show, I mean, actually all the way up to like not last year, but the year before, I ran all 6 or 7 years of my show, which was small and it kept growing, off of one circuit. You know, and it worked. I had no circuit breaks or nothing like that. And when I got to the pixel tree, I found an extra circuit in the house, another outlet that I could plug into, so I decided to do that. But if you have a big show and you're worried about your circuits, you might want to go with 5 volt pixels, because if you're doing with like a 3,000 pixel tree, that adds up to some power, a little bit, not a whole lot. You know, 12 volt is easier because you don't need as much power injection, but it is going to consume more watts, you know, on your overall circuit use. So that's something to think about too. So, okay, so planting your tree. Okay, how tall of a tree do you want? I mean, that's obvious, right? But you also want to decide about the spread of the tree. Do you want a fat tree? Do you want a skinny tree, right? And how do you plan for the length of your strings for those different sizes, right? You know, because the dimensions will affect the length of your strings. I made a mistake on mine because when I wanted a actually 19-foot tree with a 3-foot topper, I planned my pixels as if they went straight down the pole. I forgot that when you go at an angle, they need to be a little bit longer. So my tree is actually probably about 6 or 7 pixels shorter on the bottom than it could have been. And I'm kind of burned over that because I made a mistake in my calculations. So there's a website. If you see it right there, again, this will be, you know, on on the websites and on the Facebook, you know, so you can get to this PowerPoint again. But that website where it says lightshowhub.com, Megatree Calculator, it is excellent. You can put in the specs of your height, how much spread you want, how many pixels you want per string, and it'll give you all the details of what you need to buy as far as lengths and all that kind of stuff. But what I like this especially for is the look of the tree, because it gives you a preview right there. One thing about pixel trees that kind of burned me is sometimes you'll look at them and the lights will be like, they'll get like really fine, like this is what is this, 2-inch spacing, Larry?
Yes.
Something like that. So sometimes the tree will have like 2-inch or 1-inch spacing because they want a ton of pixels. Because the more pixels, the more things, the effects will show up nicer, the text will show up nicer. but they might have the spacing of the strings far apart. So what you're going to see are strips of light separated by gaps of darkness. Okay, and to me, this is just my preference. I prefer the pixel tree to look like a matrix where everything is spaced this way evenly and this way evenly as much as possible. So this will give you, when you change the different numbers for how many strings you want and what the spacing you want, it'll let you visually see what the overall look is going to be in both directions. So if you want that nice matrix look, so that it doesn't look like streamers of lights, where it looks like a nice solid mesh, you can use that calculator to help figure that out. So you can balance that out between, and also the spacing is also important because you don't need to have 1 inch spacing on your tree if your tree is 90 feet from the road. Because you don't need your tree to be a TV, because from that distance, the lights will be closer together because you're actually seeing them from a distance. So do you need to have 1 inch spacing when your tree is that far away? I think I went with 2 inch spacing like this one, and that was perfectly fine. It looked really nice from that kind of distance. Now, if you have a small yard, then you do want some tighter spacing so your animations look nicer too. But distance does play a difference. It doesn't have to be a super mega high pixel count tree if it's further away from the road. And then we also talked about that spikerlights.com. That's your power calculator for figuring out power injection. So that'll tell you basically with how many strings of lights, the spacing between each pixel, how many strings you're using. It will tell you exactly how many injection points you need to put in between your strings of lights. It is excellent. So that'll help you plan, on your tree, do I need to put an injection point at every string, at every base? Like, do I need to join, do I have to inject every one of these, or can I do every 3? And you can put in like, I'm going to run my tree at 30% brightness, and it'll readjust its power suggestions. And it gives you a nice, I don't have that here, but it gives you a nice bar chart just like we had on that other slide. So that's a great way to figure out your power requirements. So I do go kind of fast, if you haven't noticed. I've had lots of caffeine. Is there any questions so far? Is it pretty good? Okay, all right. And, all right, so how do you get your tree in the ground? I don't have this, but I hear this is really popular. Who has the, what do you call that, portable hole by Walter Monkhouse? Yeah, pretty convenient, isn't it? Yeah, what do you like about the portable hole since I don't have one? Okay. You don't have to leave a hole. You don't have to make a hole. You don't have to leave something in the hole. Huh? It would kill it. Yes, it would. What about you? What? Yeah, I think I had a picture of that too. I'll have to find it's on another slide. But you basically, if I'm right, you put stakes at the 4 corners of it in the grass, and then you strap it down, and they can have some turnbuckles to keep the tension on it and everything. And I think another reason why the portable hole is kind of handy is that it makes the tree easier to erect. Okay, so I think a friend of mine, the way he does it, is he actually can put the portable hole and the pole of the tree on a dolly and just roll it out there, and then it just goes right up. So that mega heavy tree goes up pretty easy. So what I chose to do is I just concreted a hole in the ground, and between seasons I just put an American flag in that hole. So I think I dual purpose it that way. So that works pretty well for me. So either way, I think it's pretty durable. And as far as the base method, you've got this half hoop here, or a 360 hoop. This is totally creative. This is up to you guys, okay? You can buy a Matos thing, or another vendor's what they call a hoop type thing. I think trampolines can also work if they're smaller trees, but this is where you get super creative. Some people take a metal pipe and they'll heat it and bend it and make their own kind of thing. I chose to go with the Matos one that is, it's actually, you can buy a 360 tree frame, right? So right here. And then they give you these vertical metal bars here, and they bolt together to form a double stack. So you have the part that sits on the ground, and then your springs will attach to the top part. And I actually drilled holes myself, and I put in those J-hooks there. You just buy them at Menards or whatever. And then I bungee cord my strings to that. So I just hook them onto those J hooks, and that's super, super easy. So I thought that worked pretty well. The one thing I didn't plan for too well is the wind will move that around if you don't strap it down somehow. And I think I used those corkscrew things. I put like 2 or 3 of those in the ground, then I roped them to that, and it stopped moving around so much. So we're going to talk about the wind in a little bit too, because who's had a failure? Who's had their tree fail? 1 person, 2 people? Yes, I can raise your hand because I don't blame you. So yeah, it's really deflating when a tree goes down and it wasn't planned properly. So, or for some reason, it could be anything. Last winter was bad for wind. I was looking outside my window every night on a bad wind day, just expecting that tree to go down. So, okay. All right, so these are different pole types. Black iron pipe, muffler pipe, that's pretty thick stuff. Thick wall EMT, which is also called rigid EMT. Don't get plain EMT, that's not strong enough. The rigid is a really thick wall type of EMT pipe. Structural tubes. Don't underestimate the wind. I honestly, if you're doing anything like what I'm doing, like 19 foot or something within that range, I would probably stick with the rigid EMT. I wouldn't do black iron pipe or the muffler pipe, for something that tall. So we'll talk about the Walter Monkhouse pole design, but he's an engineer. He sort of knows this kind of stuff. So the wind is stronger than you think. It's also very important to have your tree very plumb and level, okay? Because the moment you have any kind of angle to it, if you don't measure that very accurately, the wind will multiply that error when the wind hits it and pulls on it, and that really makes it more likely to fail. So when you're putting your pole up, make very sure that it's as straight as possible when you guide wire and all that kind of stuff. So don't underestimate the wind. Okay, so here's that ASAP pole. I thought about showing the video, but I don't want to waste the time. But basically what it is it's a pole right here on the top picture. That's a 2-inch EMT pipe. And then you see that winch up there? Get it on Amazon, it's like a boat winch kind of thing. And it's really hard to see in this video, or this picture, but that silver hook right there is actually hooked into a silver pipe. That's a little thin EMT pipe. So somehow you have the pole, the big pole, and the thinner pole is inside of it, right? And then when it's fully collapsed, you have this little thing at the top that hooks over, and you put a pipe in it, and then the winch can push on that pipe, which pushes on that hook, and it pulls up that extends it like this. So when you have that second stage extended, you can put a pin in there to lock it in place. So basically, you start out with a 8 foot above ground, pole, and then you ratchet it up to get to the rest of the height of your pole. So it's a ratcheting pole system. So on his website, which is at the bottom link right there, ASAP Pole 2, he gives you complete instructions for how to put that together. He gives you all the parts lists, video to watch. It's really well done. So if you want to save a little money and you want to make the pole system yourself, it's really, really well done. And he'll write to you too. If you have questions about it, he's happy to. Who's met Walter? I know Clyde has. Walt Monkhouse. He's quite a character. Yeah, he's like everyone's grandpa, and he'll talk your ear off.
The only problem is you better scream on the phone.
You what? What'd you say? He's not that bad. He will be. I don't know if he's going to be at Expo or not. He's going to be at Expo. Go to Expo just to see Walter and his wife Jackie. They are pretty awesome people. Jackie, I have to digress a minute. We use X-Lights, right? And the other software is Vixen. LOR is, what's their software? Anyway, yes, S5. Well, before all that started, there is a professional software called Madrix. And that's what they use for like concert halls and rock concerts and things. It's an animation light system. His wife learned Madrix, before X-Lights got cool. And that's what she uses for animation. So can you fathom that? Yeah, that takes some serious learning. So that's a picture of my pole. Excuse me, test extended it. That's the full height and everything. So, okay. So this is kind of boring. I'm not going to talk about too much. So what I do with my pole is I erect it, but I don't have it extended yet. So once it's, the first pole is up but it's not erected yet, I go up on a ladder and I put all my strings on, and then I ratchet the whole thing up. So I don't put the strings on until it's already way high up in the air. And that's, I think, how most people do it around here. You get your strings on ahead of time. I also put my star on the tree ahead of time to get it ready to go, so I don't have to, because once it's up there, it ain't coming down until Christmas is done. Okay, I could bring it down, but that's a drag. So the more I can get it done up there, it saves a lot of time. Okay, that's just another idea. That's something I found on the internet. Some people will put some pulleys on the top of their tree, and then they have the lights starting on the ground, and then they use a rope to pull the lights up through that pulley and then tie it up so they don't go down anymore. I think that's traditional. That's old pixel trees or old poultry method kind of thing. We just pull your pixel trees up. Okay, that's just pictures. And big trees are dangerous. I think this guy was putting a tree up. Do you see him in the bigger picture? Yeah, he's way up there near the solar panels, near that flag. Be very careful with this kind of stuff. I think one thing that Walter told me about these ratcheting pole systems is that the winch crank, when you crank it up, if you're not careful, if you don't have a firm grip on that, and you lose grip, if you let go, that handle will swing around as it tries to come back down, and you can break a wrist that way. So whenever you're doing that crank system, and also the tree topper, if you're on a ladder and you're at the junction where the pole comes out, that middle part there, if you have your head above that junction and you're trying to crank it up or whatever, and you miss and you let go, that topper can come on your head. So you got to be careful when this thing, if you release it, you can get hurt that way. So if you're doing that ratcheting stuff. What's the tallest tree here that people have? What's anybody over 19 feet? 20? Got 20? Also, it's a traditional pole tree?
Yeah, LED.
How do you get to the top? How do you get it up there?
I use pulleys.
Huh?
I use pulleys.
Pulleys?
Yeah.
Okay, traditional way. Yeah, those kind of trees always fascinated me.
I use rigid EMT.
Rigid EMT also.
And to put it up though.
What's that?
It takes 2 of us to lift the pole up. It's heavy.
And do you have the mega strings where you wrap multiple colors together of the old-fashioned lights?
I was running 48 strings down to a loop.
Yep.
I anchored my loop in using the 4-foot long screw anchors, screw into the ground.
Yep.
And then you can run plastic conduit through the island around in a circle and then tie the string to that.
Got it. Yep. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm almost out of time. Where did that happen? Okay, so different ways you can attach them. Guide wires. Okay, pretty important stuff. The guide wire will only protect your tree up to the point where the guide wire stops, right? So anything above the guide wire is not protected from the wind. Okay, so pretty much, I did one set of guide wires up, and you want to do it above the joint of your tree. Okay, because the joint where the 2 poles were intersecting, that's the weakest part of your tree. So you want to guide it a little bit higher than that. AmericanEarthAnchors.com is a good place for finding out about those corkscrew anchors you put in the ground. The right type, the right size for your soil type. They do all that kind of work for you, so you don't want to get that part wrong. Okay, there's our guide wires. Put it above. 45-degree angle is important on your guide wires too. If you want the strongest, guide wire support, make sure you get that 45 degree. Anything less or greater, you're going to lose the purpose of the guide wires. They won't be as strong. Okay. All right. These are some things that I learned. If that you probably do too. That after parts, like every week of your show, you should probably check your tension on your guide wires. Check the attachment to the pole. Make sure they haven't gotten pulled loose. Always check that stuff to make sure it's tight. And tie little colored ribbons on your guide wires, unless you want to get yourself hung. You're walking along and suddenly your neck catches one, you fall over. It's pretty embarrassing. I've never done it, but I've heard it's pretty embarrassing.
I have. It is.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I have marks to show it. Okay, I don't mean to run through this, but I really talk too much. Okay, we talked about the Boscoyo strips. You can also get matrix type pixel strips, and you can cut them to the shape of a tree and have a flat tree if you want to put it on the side of your house. That's a clever way to make a tree. Okay. You see that horizontal brace right there? That black one? That's simply this stuff right here without pixels that's been overlaid on the other vertical strips. Because I didn't realize this, but those individual strips are like wind sails. When wind is coming, you think it'd go around all that and leave your strips alone? It doesn't. It blows your strips everywhere. So I had like one rung of those last year, and that wasn't nearly enough. You need at least 2 of those to stabilize your strings so they don't move up and down or move from side to side. So yeah, the wind will catch your tree and blow it around. And again, I use J-hooks on the bottom, right? I drilled holes and put J-hooks on here. I used carabiners for the top, right? And then, and most of you probably know this, but your pixel strips are plastic, but you can buy these little, on the bottom there, those little squares of metal, and you can reinforce the top and bottoms of your strings, so when you put your carabiners in, they won't pull on the plastic, they'll pull on the metal instead. So that's really handy. And then I use those ball bungee cords for the bottom to attach my strips to there. And if you're building a pixel tree for the first time, you don't want, at least in my case, you don't want to pre-cut all these to the perfect length you need the first time around. Because when you put your frame on the ground, your ground may not be level. So your hoop might be slightly this way or this way or this way, and your pixel strings will be different lengths around that frame based on your ground contour. So what I did is I left about 4 or 5 holes extra, and then when I strung my tree for the first time, I adjusted the distance of those bottom pieces to make it tensioned right, and then I cut them out. So that was a gotcha that almost caught me. Okay, thanks. Okay, there's another picture where it looks like, here's those little bungee cords. Everyone has different ways to tension your cords, so that's just one way. And this is kind of boring, so I'm going to skip it, because we already sort of talked about this already. That's boring. Okay. Some people put their controllers right on the tree. Okay, the stars are kind of a neat topic. Okay, most people do the Coro stars, quick and easy kind of stuff, and they look kind of nice. You can do different animated effects. Some people put wireframes and put pixels on the wireframes. That looks kind of classy. I saw this cool video right here with that hoop, and all I did was I took EMT pipe and I bent it into a circle, and then I took strips of pixels and went crisscross like 12 or 16 times, and they all crossed in the middle. It was cool, because you can do these like star patterns with, it's like a spinner. It's like a cheap spinner for your tree. So that was my solution, and I thought it looked really cool. So different ways you can do star stuff. And we talked about how to lift it. Don't do a Chevy Chase like that. It doesn't work. We talked about that. Talked about power considerations and power injection, all that kind of stuff. What should I have done better next time? If I would do this over again, what would I do? Would have planned better for the wind. Okay, the worst thing that happened is you'll lose your expensive tree from not making it strong enough. I should have made it taller. Maybe I think I would have been happy with a 10-foot tree, and I should have went with a 15 or higher. You don't want to put all this effort into a tree and find out that you wished it would have been a little better because you just feel like you just wasted a lot of time. Should have used a portable hole. They're handy. Don't use those ribbon pixels for a tree. The cheap ribbon ones. That'll lead you up for disappointment. Another thing is maybe you didn't use enough pixels, or you didn't put enough pixels to go around the front. I think I use like 32 for mine for the 180. Some people would start with not enough, and then it doesn't look good because your animations don't look good. If the pixels are too far apart. On mine, I wish I would have went more than 32, because when I put videos on my tree, even at 90 feet, the videos are blurry. So I should have probably went with 64 pixels around the front, or at least halfway, like 48 or something. So you don't skimp out on pixels if you want to have nice effects on it. Okay, I think we're just about done. We're not going to talk about that because this is all common sense. These are places you can get help with all sorts of things, and a lot of you know these already. These are Facebook groups. If you're not on Facebook, shame on you, because you're losing out on a very helpful support community. You can help with all sorts of questions about anything. And these are common, these are a lot of groups around here, including, I didn't put the Indy one on here, that's embarrassing, that can help you with all sorts of things. You know, this is all about community, and this is one way you can get into community to help each other with things. Okay, and again, this is on, this will be on the PowerPoint if you need to come back to this. That's it. I got it done with 1 minute to spare. Yeah. Shannon, can you explain this? I know, but you made it.
So it's just a cheap novelty hat. It's just a belt hat with the matrix I bought off of Amazon. I plan on putting a digital controller on it, so I could do actually like right now it's just a cheap Chinese, but I'm just controlling from here.
It's got a Falcon player on it. Oh, it's got its own software, so he can Bluetooth control it. I wasn't going to wear it because I thought he might put obscene things on while I was trying to give my talk, so I was kind of nervous. So any other questions about the real topic at hand here? So cool stuff. So everyone's got pixel trees, so we're good with that. So good deal.